Okay, so we have to do an experiment for this week, and I am in charge of that. I'm really excited for this week's experiment. Since we're in Salvador, then we're heading to Rio, and we're talking about the Atlantic rainforest. I thought we should do something and talk a little bit about plants, talk a little bit about transpiration. So I do have that experiment handy here. I'm going to do it for us live, and then you can replicate it into your classrooms. So I'm going to switch. I have two cameras set up here. So I'm going to bring in my second camera, and I'm going to make that one nice and full screen. And let's take a look at this experiment. So you need a few little supplies for this experiment, but nothing that should be too difficult to get in your classroom or in your home. So you need 2 stalks of celery, but it's really important they have the leaves on them. You need 2 glasses. You need some food coloring. It could be the same coloring, or you could use 2 different colors. You need a hair dryer, and then you need a ruler. So not a lot of tools, things I think you should be able to get a hand on in your classrooms or in your homes. Now, transpiration is really important because when you look at those big, tall trees in the rainforest that can grow to be 200 feet tall, you have to wonder, how is that water getting from the roots all the way up to the trees in the top, especially in the emergent layer of the rainforest that pokes out above the canopy and, like I said, can be over 200 feet above the ground? Well, trees have a transportation system for water and also for sugars, but today we're going to focus on transpiration and the movement of water. So what you need to do for this experiment is you need to take your celery and cut them to about the same length. And then take your stalks of celery, so I'll bring this into the view here, and put them into your food coloring in your water. Let me just adjust those a little bit. There we go. So you see I have them there. And then it's really important that you have the leaves on the stalk of the celery. Very important that the leaves are there on the celery. Now, after you put them in there, you need to leave them for about half an hour. So one will be your control. So I'm going to say my control is my blue one. And I'm not going to do anything with this one for half an hour. I'm going to tuck it to the side, and I'm going to leave it for 30 minutes. Now, this one here, I'm going to experiment with heat and movement of air. So I have it in here. I'm going to take my hair dryer. So I snuck upstairs and I stole my wife's hair dryer. And for every 5 minutes over the half an hour, I am going to blow warm air onto this celery stalk. So every 5 minutes, some warm air. Maybe you do it for a minute or two. Make sure the air is flowing around the top. Make sure that it's nice and warm. And then take a break for another 5 minutes. Then repeat. Do it again for 5 minutes. And so on, like that. Then you're going to take a look at your results. This is where we're going to do some measurement. So we're going to bring this up nice and up in front here. And then we're going to take a look here. And you're going to see if there's a difference between how much the water traveled through the celery. So you're going to be very careful. Maybe your teacher will have something like a butter knife or something that you can use in the classroom. And you are going to take out your celery, and then you're going to start making some cuts. Let me adjust that there. And you're going to try and find out how far, by looking at the color, how far it traveled through your celery. Now, mine has only been in for a little while, so it hasn't traveled too far, but you're going to kind of keep making those cuts and see how far it's traveled through the celery. You'll do that for the control, where we didn't use any air, we didn't use any heat, and you will do it for the one where we did use the heat and the air, and then use your ruler to measure how much distance it traveled, what the difference was. So we want you to try this experiment in your classroom this week, and then send us in your, so let me come back in here. We'll switch screens. And there's going to be some questions that we want you to answer for us today or over the next 2 weeks. The first one is, how did the heat and airflow affect the rate of transpiration in your celery stalk? So did it travel less? Did it travel more? What was the difference between the two when you measured? Your second question is, what's the difference between xylem and phloem in a plant's stem or trunk? So xylem and phloem are used to transport things inside of the plant. What are those doing, the xylem and the phloem? And finally, light. does light have any impact on transpiration in plants? So those are your 3 questions that we'd like you to answer after you've conducted the experiment in your classroom. You might want to try it a few times as well and see what your results are. And then, of course, you have 2 weeks to get your results in. Send some pictures of your classroom doing the activity, send in the answers to those questions, and then send them to classroom@darwin200.com. So you have 2 weeks to get those answers in. Get your celery into the water with the food dye. Make sure you have your hair dryer so that you can make those tests. And then 2 weeks to get those final answers in. And then we will pick our 3 winners of our Amazon gift cards. So there we go. 2 weeks for this week's experiment, looking at transpiration. And I thought that was an excellent fit because we are traveling along the rainforest. We'll be in Rio soon. And so let's learn a little bit about plants and how they move water around.